I only hope and pray that everyone gets on the same page and can start to see what we all can do if we all raise our voices in positive and impactful ways, because that's not happening today.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
Are you interested in having Rick speak at your event or business? Here is what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
I absolutely loved his performance. It made me feel some type of way.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickornelas.com to book him today.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Chain social impact hero, and boy, are you in for a treat. She's a coach with an uncompromising and disciplined approach that gets results. She's a global business relations expert with a ton of international success due to her focused and strategic plans that remove limiting obstacles. She has a positive spirit and understands the power of the ripple effect to create change, which definitely resonates with us. So please welcome the host of Extraordinary Work, Conversations About Creating Change, certified professional business communications and executive coach, Terry Yoffe. Welcome to the iSpark Change podcast, Terry.
Thank you. Oh my God, I don't know that I can live up to that intro. Wonderful. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, I always like doing the intros because I feel grateful and blessed to have every single one of our guests on the show, and so I want to do them, give them their due in terms of the intro. So,
thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So one thing I want to start out with is that, and we were talking about this just off air a second ago, but it's that you and I was on your show,
Mm-hmm.
On Extraordinary Work, Conversations About Creating Change, because I'm also about creating change. And that's a way that we connected and, a way that we resonate with one another. So I read a quote that you have that says, the one thing you need to do in this world is keep up and stay current with changes, whether you like it or not. So I want to start there. Why is that an important quote for you?
I actually wrote that quote a long time ago. I think it resonates for all of us, because if you're not current, if you're not relevant, you kind of fall by the wayside. And I always love General Eric Shinesky, I think, his quote, which is, if you don't like change, you're going to hate irrelevance even more.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
And I've tried to live by that, especially as a coach, right? I've been coaching for 19 years. And it's not doing business as usual, whatever business you're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always learning. It's knowing the landscape. And knowing how to zig when everyone is zigging and not zagging when everyone is zigging. So we have to keep up no matter what we're doing. I mean, my philosophy, obviously, not anyone else's, but I thought it was relevant to put that onto my website, because for my clients, it's certainly about change. You can't get from point A to point B without doing something different, right? If
Yeah.
you're doing the same thing, and the definition of insanity, right? If you're doing the same thing over and over, expecting, different results, it's not going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, so true. And I think it's important what you said in your coaching is because that's one of the reasons why people, they look for a coach is because they get stuck. And it's one of the ways that I know I've helped my clients and, being a coach for the past 7 years is that a lot of times they're stuck. They may not necessarily know how to change or what to change. And that's where they need some guidance in navigating that change, what that change is going to look like.
And it's astonishing, and I'm sure you've seen this, where I had a client years ago that had no idea she spoke negatively. Absolutely no idea. Every conversation for a while had a negative element until I had to stop her and say, however I said it, but talked about, do you know that you're very negative in how you approach things? And it was like a deer in the headlights. And like a light bulb went off. What? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So I do communications coaching. That's another area where most people have no idea what they're saying. It's like, open your mouth and talk without thinking about where am I going? What do I want to get across? How am I coming across?
Yeah. And also working in communication and studying that for many years. And, even going back to, I have a degree in communications, but going way back that it's an area that I still work on to this day for myself, because I see the importance of it. And I can agree with you that so many people, I think, don't understand the importance of it. And so many people will just kind of speak to think. They'll just put it out there without speaking first. And then you may have some regrets, or you hurt someone's feelings, or, it's not what you intended. And I mean, I see that a lot in relationships. I mean, even my relationships where I might make a mistake.
I was just going to say, exactly. If I have to have a conversation with my husband or my kids about anything, I think it through. How am I going to approach it? Not to make people wrong, but to get the point across instead of, which most people do.
Yeah.
What I do is something that somebody on air might love to know is I come from my own experience. I'll say, so my experience of what just happened is, therefore you're putting it on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good tactic.
And it works.
Yeah, for sure. And that definitely is, it prevents the kind of attacking language that so often, people use, which, you did this or you did that. And that only leads to a some kind of defensive situation where people are going back and forth without really listening.
Right, exactly.
To one another. Exactly.
I'm sorry. My earpiece keeps popping out, so I apologize.
No worries. So one thing, that I know creating change is important and making a difference. That's made a difference for you. So share with our listeners, because we see you as someone that is spreading positive change in the world, that does have that positive impact on humanity. Someone that I call a social impact hero. That's the theme for our show.
Right.
And so my question would be, where does that come from? Share kind of how you started being interested in change, or, share your story on how you got started in that area.
I think it was innate. I don't think I can pinpoint exactly. I think that I always tried, creating change can have many meanings. It can be something as tiny as saying good morning to somebody. or it can be as magnanimous as changing the world, right? And I think that I always had an affinity for being nice to people. Where I worked, you know, whether it was the guy that did the mail, right, in the mail room, or the guy that brought up whatever, right? I always had an affinity. I always talked to them. It wasn't that, oh, hi, bye. I made them feel seen and heard. And that can create change. And in my work, I think, again, my first sales job was at Women's Wear Daily, and they hired me. I had no sales experience whatsoever, and I had a territory, but I knew the fashion industry, and I did phenomenally well. And it came down to people wanting to work with me. I had integrity. They trusted me. I didn't try to screw them. And from there, I went on to, and I took somebody that had no sales experience, a $600,000 territory to $1.3 million.
Nice.
People wanted to work with me, and I respected them, and I cared about them. And my word was my word. And you're creating change on some level, right? It might not be, again, magnanimous. And then I went to Condé Nast in sales and did phenomenally well. And people wanted to work with me. They call, I want to have Terry as my sales rep. And I think that's how I made a difference. I think I was always attuned to wanting to make a difference in people's lives, because I did not grow up in an environment that offered that. And I was very sensitive to it. So I started my own rep company and did very, very well, because people wanted to work with me. They knew who I was. I had a reputation. And from there, I segued into coaching, something I didn't know, and joined the ICF New York City chapter and went from secretary to president. And again, created change within our chapter. What could I do to make a difference? What could I do for the chapter? How could I help? And then I had wanted to think about, what do I want to do next? And I said, you know what? I would do either a TED Talk or podcasting. And so be it. A former client of mine I worked with her on starting her legacy of what she wanted. And once that got started, I got to do podcasts on her show and webinars. And that's how it segued to my deciding to go into podcasting and extraordinary work, conversations about creating change, is talking to people like yourself that have created change, and I emphasize in their corner of the world, right? It's not global, but it's somewhere that they've made some impact. And that's my story.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, because I think there's a couple keys there that are very important to highlight for our audience. One is that, you know, what you said, like the corner of your world, of their world, is that you can create change anywhere. That, because what you were sharing about, you know, thinking, oh, it's going to be world changing, or I have to go, you know, to a third world country and do this or do that. That's what I used to think was change. And that prevented me from doing the smaller thing, from doing the, you know, and what I mean by smaller, I mean just, you know, in terms of, you know, just scope and size, but not smaller in terms of impact, but even like you said, to help that one person that is on your journey or, in your work. Because what I heard you say, the other thing I want to highlight, Terry, is what I heard you say in every example is that you were supporting others and helping others. And in turn, that led to success for you, but it wasn't about you. It was about
exactly
others.
Right, exactly, about others. And, we all, not we all, but I love helping others. And I do that a lot. I'm always there, that could be a disadvantage as well. But I'm always wanting to help people. You need something, let me help you. A friend of mine needs knee surgery. Oh, let me dig in. Let me go look and see what doctors. It's what I do. Am I a control freak? Absolutely. I am. I am. But I'm always willing to help others get what they need. Oh, you need a coach? Let me find one for you. And it's just something that's there for me.
Yeah. And I think that's one kind of secret to life is that, the more we do that, the more we help others, the more we end up helping ourselves, the more we benefit from it, the more reward we get from helping others. That's, that kind of law of reciprocity, golden rule, however you want to call it, paying it forward. That's taught in every major religion and in every culture to do that. And the unfortunate thing is that so many people don't do it. So many people don't make it a part of their lives. They're too focused on themselves and their own well-being. When the reality is, the more you help others, the more you're going to end up helping yourself.
That's so true. The podcasts, it's a lot of work, as you know, but yet I love getting to know the people that I interview, that I talk to, that I have a conversation with. And it is like this, a conversation. Everyone is different. Everyone has done something. Some maybe a little bigger than others. But it's so interesting to hear about people's lives and how they've gone out on a limb to make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. So in keeping with our theme of the show, Terry, Social Impact Hero, here is actually an acronym. And the first letter, the H, is that a hero honors their purpose, because their purpose is what defines, who they are and how they show up in the world, the foundation of what they do. So what's your purpose? What's your purpose you feel in life and in your business and even in the podcast, I guess?
I want to say make a difference. Maybe it's trite. I don't know. But it allows me to help others. And what does that mean? It could mean having them on the show to do a podcast, to have a conversation, to highlight them. It's always about the other person. It's my podcast, but I don't really look at it that way. I think it's a venue for those that come on to really talk and to share. It's about sharing who they are, what they are, and what they've done. And it's rewarding for me on that level. So it's making a difference in my corner of the world, my little corner of the world. And that's always been something I've wanted to do, make a difference.
Yeah, which I remember you saying that goes back as kind of something that was innate for you going way back. Now, you also said earlier, Terry, something to the effect of, when you were younger, that it wasn't always easy or wasn't always supported, I guess. So, yeah, share a little bit about that, about what you mean by that.
I had a client once, and I don't know how the conversation came up about what her challenges were and her strengths. And she said, I survived my childhood. And I think I'm going to take that little quote. I didn't grow up in an environment that was nurturing, or they did the best they could, but I wasn't in alignment, or I was different, right? And I knew it. Who I wasn't a mean kid. So I think as I was able, and there's a lot of hurt when you're a child, mm-hmm. and you're different. You don't go along with the pack. So when I was able to start to make a difference, I did. So it was surviving my childhood and becoming who I had to become through my own challenges. I know what it took to even be right here, right now. Mm-hmm. And yet, one door closed, another door always opened. Mm-hmm. I was very, very fortunate. I don't know what you say, fortunate, but life took care of me.
Yeah. And I think part of that goes to, you have to put some work in too, right? That it's, in order for life to take care of you, you have to do the work.
Right, exactly.
And make the change, make
right.
a difference like you were talking about. So when you said that you knew that you were different, if you don't mind, like elaborating on that about, how was that, what was the biggest challenge with that? Was that when you were young or as a teenager or what?
I think of course, vulnerability is at the heart of everything, right? Most people don't want to be vulnerable. It's a very, very painful experience when you let somebody in and you get hurt, especially as a child. Mm-hmm. And you have to make a decision. Do you close off and go through life that way? Or do you figure out how to be open, be vulnerable? Of course, as a child, you don't have the tools available. As you get older, you kind of learn. To be transparent, I spent many, many, many years in analysis and therapy. And at one point, I was going to go back and become a therapist. Instead, I chose the route of coaching. So I learned a lot about myself. And I'm a learner. I'm a lifetime learner. I'm still exploring my inner being. Mm-hmm. And I'm willing to be vulnerable. I've had people hurt me. But as an adult, you look at it and you don't have the knee-jerk reaction or from the past. You can isolate it and you can move forward.
Yeah.
And it's just my nature to want to help people and be there for people and do what I can.
Yeah. So how do you see that? Or do you see that the things that you had to go through in your life and the pain or the adversity that you had to go through, do you see that now that helps you in your work of helping others?
Absolutely. 100%. I believe, being a coach for 19 years, if you have not explored every closet, opened up every door within yourself and looked at it, that when it comes time to work with a client and they have the problem that you have locked that door, you will not be able to help them because you have not uncovered it yourself. That's just, again, my own perspectives here, right? My philosophies. Doesn't mean everyone has to agree. But from doing it for 19 years, I don't think there is a subject that I will not and cannot go to with a client.
Yeah.
From
and
A to Z.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
That's all right.
I think that speaks to, we really have to do the work ourselves. That you have to, to lead anyone on their journey at all, you have to have, you don't always have to have the same exact experience, but you have to have some experiences and be able to share those, like you said.
100%, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So tell me, Terry, because 19 years, that's a good long time. There's a lot of newer coaches. It's become popular in the last few years. I've coached a lot of other coaches myself, and people that are just barely brand new. But you started at a time when it wouldn't have been popular or wasn't trendy or anything like that, or even in the online space where it's so commonplace nowadays.
Right.
But what do you think really drove you to the coaching?
It was what I said. When my career in advertising kind of came to a halt, even with my own business, the landscape had changed. And who moved my cheese, the book going down that same path over and over, I wasn't going to do that. And I had to come up with, where do I go from here? That was why I thought, with all of my therapy and knowing myself, my human mind, and everyone's is the same, the human mind is the human mind. I thought I would become a therapist. And when that really wasn't an option, I then looked at coaching, only because other people had talked about it. I had never heard about it. And through investigating, that's what I came up with. And I didn't start coaching when I was 12. So I went from the apex of a career to the basement. I had to start over.
Yeah.
I had to go back to school. I had to get a certificate in coaching. And then who was going to hire me? They knew me as a business person. They didn't know me as a coach. Build a website. I went for my certification as a coach. And then the ICF, I went through my accreditations to become a PCC. So I did a lot of work. I did neurolinguistics. I've done a lot. So I reshaped myself, and not at the tender age of 12. So again, I don't know what I would do today, because coaching is different. It's not that it's different. You're looking for the same end result. Whereas years ago, you couldn't tell somebody what to do, right? There was a formula for how you coached. Today, it's very different in the length and breadth that a coach has. I take poetic license in how I coach, and everyone coaches differently. So, the goal is to get your client to where they want to go. That's it.
Yeah. And then the journey may change slightly, how you get there. I can see how that's evolved and grown. And then you've grown as well, right? You learn more, you're constantly learning. So new techniques, things like that.
Exactly. New techniques. What am I able to put into play that I couldn't put into play back then? How do you work with a client and offer your own thoughts to them? And how do you couch it? And being able to give some examples of something that happened to you, right? But asking their permission. May I share a story with you?
Yeah, for sure. I know, because those stories are what, connect us and what people can relate to as well. And so I'd say in the E of heroes and engaging the audience in their mission. And I'd say you do that through your podcast. So how has the podcast, how have you grown since you started the podcast?
I think I have fine-tuned my ability to communicate and connect with people. Being more comfortable asking questions just from listening to what somebody is saying. And, being willing to be out there, to be vulnerable, because a podcast is vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
sure.
At the end of the day, I told myself, if this does not work, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. And making really sure that I understood that.
Yeah, and that's important because so many people don't try. They get afraid and then they just don't bother trying.
Right, and I did. I am. Where it goes, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, but at least, you are trying, and you are having impact. And that's with the R's is rippling the message to spread positive change, which I think you've demonstrated. You do that with your work. You do that with your podcast, as well.
Right.
And that your heart, the O is open your heart to the world, and that you are opening your heart. I mean,
definitely.
Through the podcast, through this interview right now, that you're doing that as well. So, before we kind of wrap up here, one of the questions that we always ask our guests is to share a spark moment. Now, a spark moment is, something that you're familiar with because, you talk about the ripple effect and creating change. And we've coined that as a spark moment, where there's that one conversation, that one interaction that you have with someone that creates that ripple effect that can create long-term change for that individual, for yourself, can make a difference. So if you can provide an example of, someone that you've worked with or someone that you've spoken to on the podcast, or someone where, you saw that effects of that spark moment, where you saw, some ripple effect and creating change.
One thing that happened, and I'm hoping that this aligns with what you just said. One, I think, spark moment for me was when ICF put together a experience coaching series video. This is going back a few years. And for the first series, they only invited 4 people, 4 coaches. And I was one of them. I honestly, when they reached out to me, I thought it was a joke. I had to actually call somebody that I knew at the ICF office and say, is this a joke? No. And it meant so much to me that they would choose me out of thousands of coaches to be part of that series. They thought enough of me and what I had done and created that I was one of the first ones chosen to do that interview with and a client offered to do it. One client said, I'm there for you. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I'm sure, because that video would obviously have been seen by many people.
Many.
And so the impact on that, could have led someone to decide to be a coach or to get a coach, or There's probably multiple ripple effects from that example.
And
you may not ever realize, and that's part of it.
And one other thing, very quickly, they asked me to write an article not too long ago, and it was called Hiring a Coach, What's Love Got to Do with It, based on Tina Turner's song.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote the article, and they just reposted it this week on LinkedIn.
Oh, nice.
And the amount of people that spoke up and replied is like amazing. I don't look at that. Something I wanted to do. Being part of the ICF, being president, was what I wanted to do. It was making a difference. And that article, and here it is. So I'm humbled, is all I can say. So grateful and so humbled by what others think of me in a way that, I don't know, I just do it. I don't think about, oh, look at me, I'm so great.
Yeah.
So.
And that's where you see that it comes from that heart of humility, right? And that grateful heart, that it's not coming from some other place. And that's where it has more of an impact. That's where it does resonate with people more, because it comes across as genuine and not self-serving.
Mm.
And I think that's important. That's important for any social impact hero.
But I love that. I just have loved being here. I loved having you on my podcast and our conversation, and how we connected just through somebody, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always grateful. It's just gratitude and appreciative.
Yeah, which is such an important emotion to have, and a feeling to have for others, because that leads to more of the helping others and serving others.
Right. Right.
So where can our audience learn more about you and find you and everything?
My website is www.try, T-R-Y, which are my initials, by the way, coaching.com. And you can find everything about me, my blogs, my podcasts, yours as well, is on there. And if somebody wants to reach out, you can get the information there. Or email me, terry@trycoaching.com.
Fantastic. Well, we make sure that those are in the show notes so everyone can follow you and connect with you there. And so I have one final question, which we ask everyone on the podcast here, because our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people in the next 5 years through our community and our upcoming social media platform and our work. And we know we can't do this alone, that we need the help of social impact leaders like you to help show others the way, because many people feel, as I used to, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, that they're too small to make a difference, that their actions don't create change. So we value your thoughts and opinion as a social impact hero. So I'm going to ask you to peer into the iSpark Change crystal ball and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts believing that they can have an impact on our future?
It could certainly become a lot better than it is today. I only hope and pray that everyone gets on the same page and can start to see what we all can do if we all raise our voices in positive and impactful ways, because that's not happening today.
Yeah, and I only hope, Terry, thank you for your answer. And I only hope that, by virtue of my show and your podcast and the work that we're doing, that we help more people to see that and to start, turning the tides.
We only hope, and that's part of our mission, right? Yeah,
exactly. I pray every day that it just happens in my lifetime, that I'll get to see the fruits of my labor.
Right, exactly. We can only hope.
Yeah, we can only hope. Well, thank you very much for taking time today to share your heart and your wisdom with our audience. Terry, you came in, you over-delivered as I knew you would. Your passion and inspiration are, I can tell you're a very genuine and caring individual, and you're humble, and you lead with a heart of service and gratitude, which tells me you're going to continue to have success in the podcast and in your work and in all facets of life. So keep wielding those superpowers as an iSpark Change social impact hero. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Remember, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all. And we loved hearing Terry's today. Terry Yoffe, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, but you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero. We'll see you next time. Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.